Welcome to Ceretivity with Shandel, a podcast for the marketing community to connect and learn from each other.
Hello and welcome to Ceretivity with Shandel. I'm here today with Patricia Kyriacou. Patricia is a finance broker and the owner of PK Lending. We're going to be talking about how Patricia has grown her business, the importance of word of mouth and trust. Welcome, Patricia.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm excited and nervous.
There's lots to chat about today. The nerves will go very quickly, I'm sure. Let's start by doing a brief introduction of your career history today and why you've chosen the area that you're working in.
Yes, I have had an interesting career history, actually. I'm a qualified pastry chef by trade. I then, after being qualified, I didn't want to work the hours that I did. I actually went into the motor industry in sales. So I was in a dealership on the Central Coast for nearly 11 years and did many things from sales, team management, and then also went into the finance, which I really enjoyed and thought really highly of. And because of that, I then went into mortgages to see if I enjoyed it just as much as vehicle finance. And I did. I actually loved it even more. And in that time, I've just enjoyed helping people along the way and sharing that finance knowledge that probably isn't the most daily conversation that we could or should have at times, like at events or barbecues and everything in between. And I just truly enjoy helping people. And I love that aspect of, being able to do all loans and not limiting myself.
It's so interesting what you're saying about the pastry chef role, because I know you to be an incredibly hard worker doing very long hours for your clients. So obviously that just wasn't a good fit. Pastry chef was not for you.
I think it was the 2 a.m. starts and finishing at 2 in the afternoon. How do you have that work-life balance? I don't say I have it right now because as you're starting and growing your own business, it's definitely not there yet. However, there is light at the end of the tunnel and I'm not getting up at 2 a.m., starting work at that time anymore.
It's a little bit different. What does, out of interest, we'll dive into the work a little bit more, but I'm curious, what does a typical workday look like for you?
Yeah, I get up at 4 a.m. every day. Weekend, during the week, every time it's just 4 a.m. Naturally, my body clock now. I'm at the gym and then walk my 2 dogs, which I adore, that sunrise walk with them. It's one of my favorite parts of my day. Then I'm normally starting work and have client calls before 7. 7 a.m. is pretty much when I have my daily calls with some of my clients, because if you're a tradie, you're a farmer, that's why you want a broker. You don't or else you can't get to the bank half the time anyway, or you want to have those conversations before your day starts. And for me, when I was doing shift work, I was trying to buy a house then myself. And, you miss out on sleep to fit in with someone else's schedule, which is so difficult and so hard. And that can lead into so many different things, from poor sleep and all the decisions that can kind of you snowball on a bad day because you haven't had that sleep. So I find I do keep my appointment book quite open, and then I'm happy to work in because I do understand what it's like being a tradie, doing night shift, doing those massive hours, running a team, everything that comes with it. And I find because I've had the career that I've had, it's quite easy to relate to what most of us do for a living.
That makes good sense, and it leads into one of the first things we wanted to talk about, which is around trust. And before I ask that question, I just sort of observe here that I think the fact that you really understand where your customers are coming from, you have been in their shoes, you're flexible in terms of how you structure your calendar, that all helps to build trust, right?
I think so. I find when we are time poor or just whether we don't have that understanding, you want to be around someone who does. So who can help you, and that is relatable, because I also find it very hard as a broker in this position. How can I give advice to someone who, if I haven't had an investment property before, how are you going to talk someone through what the repayments are like, what your first month of when you have a tenant in there. Normally your real estate agent takes weeks of your rent as upfront. Then there's things in that time. So if you're buying an investment property, you need to have nearly a 1 month buffer and repayment just sitting there before you even start to see some rent come through. But if you haven't done that yourself, and I had people when I was buying and, my own portfolio who did not give me that information. And that can be stressful if you're wanting to get ahead, but you're also trying to look at where every dollar is going to, and people aren't giving you that information. How can you get ahead properly, or you feel like you're on the back foot from the beginning? And it's just that communication that we can do I think it makes the biggest difference.
You're 100% right. And I know we've talked a lot about trust when we've had conversations before. So let's really dive into, why do you think it is a vital part of your work? Why do you think it's why people come back and refer you to other people?
I think there is a lot of brokers out there, and there's a lot of lenders, and there's someone who has a go-to person quite often. But what makes that person so important for me, it's when I call them, not only do they answer, but they can offer those services or help or point me in the right direction, and their opinion is coming from my best interest. And it's not whether I have clients who, they may not want to hear the answer that I'm going to give them, but I do give it to them. And I say it nicely. However, they do have the complete transparency of it all as well. So I think that is of value, instead of having people who will say, yeah, let me see what I can do, and then you don't know where it's up to, or something could happen. I think trust is huge. So then when you are starting your business, you are your brand, and what you say is so important.
In terms of financial services, which is the industry that you're working in, trust, I don't think there's anything more important than trust, right?
No, because you could go elsewhere in so many different ways. Like, your competition isn't just, a cafe around the corner who makes the same coffee as you and it's out of convenience. It is thousands of people offer the same thing as you and have the same lenders as you, or the same services, maybe even better. However, they want to deal with you. So I find as I'm scaling, or as I'm growing and where I want to go in life, and achieve for my business as well, I have to block out that time, whether it's, at 4 a.m. when my day starts, so I can have that couple of hours to myself to have that day that I'm wanting to. So then I can give that time and the service that comes with, being a part of PK Lending.
So for anyone who's listening, who's in a similar sort of situation to you, and they're building their business and they really want word of mouth referrals, what would you say is the link there between trust and word of mouth?
If you say you're going to do something, follow it through. Whether it is a call, I'll call you back. Whether it's I'll send that in an email today. It's those little things. Whether you're doing it at 6 o'clock at night, that email, then you've still done it. You followed through with what you've said. It's not a case of it's too late, I'll do it tomorrow, because they do remember. Like, I remember it as well. And it's so important, like with the tradespeople that I deal with when I'm renovating my house. And if someone says they're going to be there at a certain time, and the amount of times that you look at the clock and you're like, oh, they said this time, but it's so important. Just those little details. I also, myself, I send a birthday text message to every single client. I have their birthdays in my calendar. In the morning, that they get a message from me saying, happy birthday, have a good day. And it's not because I want anything, but it's just, that's something to me that I find valuable.
I really like that. And it reminds me, with a lot of marketing principles, they're not all rocket science, but it's consistency, it's being reliable, and it's being someone that, as we've said, they can trust, right?
Yeah, I think it makes a world of difference. If something goes wrong, if something breaks, if you had water everywhere, your house was getting flooded, the plumber who shows up is the one that you remember. And you're probably going to remember the people who didn't answer your calls or call you back either. So it's an analogy that I would use, not like I'm trying to bag out a plumber or a tradesperson at all, more on the lines of like the people who show up and the ones that don't, it's all memorable.
got quite a strong pipeline at the moment, and it's through word of mouth. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, I am incredibly grateful, and so I'm just so happy, really. That's probably the one word I would describe my clients who genuinely refer me to people and tag me on social media. They, want to see me succeed just as much as, helping them and get them, over the lines. They talk to people about me all the time. On the long weekend I had messages, hey, I've sent your number to this person. They're going to reach out. So I tried to have 2 days this long weekend without checking my work emails. And I had 4 people who had emailed me reaching out, wanting to have conversations about lending and how I could potentially help them, which I'm just like, it makes me feel, I'm just so happy. I'm so happy for the people I work with. And that's something I'm very mindful of as well, is who you work with, whether it's, your friends and your family and the people you give your time to now more than ever, when we have as probably limited free time as you're growing and scaling your business. I'm very grateful for my clients and very, happy to work with good people. And it just makes everything else come together.
It's much more satisfying. I'm curious, when you started out, were you asking for those referrals, or did it just start to happen organically for you?
The car industry is a great example of where my foundations have probably come from. When you're in a sales sort of role, they say on average, and I'll use a dealership for example, when I was there, they would say 1 out of 4 people you would sell a car to. So you had to speak to 4 people to get 1 yes. And that was a lot of work at times, like, how it all comes together and how many times you would see so many people. And there's days you definitely wouldn't, or days you would. And, that's average, that 1 out of 4. However, in that time, I went, well, if I'm seeing 4 people, why not just be a nice person? And those 4 people know more than 4 people. And if those other people might want a car, then I could use that as a foundation. So I would just talk to everyone as if we were going for a coffee. And, if I can't help you and this wasn't the right product for you, if you know anyone that it might actually suit, would you mind just mentioning me? And it was the same thing that I've done in finance as well. It's, if you're okay and if you're happy to deal with me and you liked how we worked together, and if you didn't, please give me that feedback. But also, if you were okay with everything, would you mind if you knew anyone else who was interested in that, I might be able to help them too. That's it. I've had clients who actually haven't done a loan with me before, and I've called, and gotten them a better rate. Now, there was no advantage for me in that. There was no payment for me in doing that. It was just a simple, I'll try and help. And if I can't help you in this stage at the moment, but let me see if I can get your rate reduced. And I was able to. Now, there was no monetary amount in it for me at all, but if I can help someone, I would. And then those people, it's incredibly how they've actually referred more people, and then that's just to say thank you as well. So if you come from a place of doing the right thing and being a genuine person, I find that's when it helps the most.
I really believe in that as well. And I think it's about authenticity. It's about paying it forward. And I think it's about being community minded as well, because when you do put out, that help to people, it does come back to your business, right?
I think so. And I also refer to, if I know I've got a client who's an electrician, who's a tradie, and I have a client who is just bought a house and has some renovations to do, I'm like, look, these are people that I know that are, that might help you in that aspect. Or here's an accountant, because that's actually my accountant that I use as well. And funnily enough, the people that I refer, my accountant rang me on my birthday to wish me a happy birthday. And you just think, how good is that when you're aligning yourself with those people that you're getting treated the way that you treat others. So it's not even a second guess that you'll refer to them. Same with conveyancers in that process. Same with real estate agents. The ones that work like you, I find when you find that person, I guess, in that way of like, we all have a different way of working, I think it just clicks. And then the client experience from start to finish is so clear cut and communicates well.
There's something there as well about getting to know people. And I know when I've worked as a writer and a marketer, there's nothing that's harder than when someone comes to you and says, just write my website. I don't want to spend any time with you. I don't want to tell you anything about my business. Just write something. And I actually say no to those kind of jobs because I know that I can't do something that does justice to their business. It's something where you have to get to know the person, build a relationship. And that sounds the same as your work.
I think so. I think it is important. Like, if I'm not fighting is the wrong word to use, but if I'm on the phone to a lender and we're disagreeing on what the capacity is for this client, and if I know and I have every single answer as to what income is where and where it's all coming from, I have clients who are farmers, and I am very passionate about Australian agriculture. I grew up on a hobby farm. My parents have Clydesdales, and that being Australian farmers is, I think, a huge part of our country. And I love how hard they work. And, it's very sad to see sometimes how unappreciated they are at moments. But I can relate because of, I guess, my knowledge on a farm. So when I'm on the phone talking about, well, their crop's coming in at this time, the reason why the income you're not seeing is a true reflection is because this is when it's happened. Or livestock sales are going to be this, this, and this. Here's the accountant's letter. Here's the extra documentation. If you have the answer because you understand the ins and outs of what we're trying to achieve and do, it becomes like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But if you're then on the phone and the person goes, well, what about this and this and this, and you don't have the answer, how can you get the best for your client if you don't have everything to be able to push it over the line to get the amount that they're wanting?
Because you're advocating for them, right?
Yeah. And it's the same for yourself. I find your knowledge and your expertise is incredible. And how you put something together compared to myself, it's probably, looking at a documentary and then, a kid's novel is my version of like a coloring in book. Like, it's just a different scale. There's no way I could say I can do what you do because I can't. However, on my end, I'm like, I would recommend you use you myself for everything because of your skill set. And I think that is important as well. As we all have our niches in what we can do and our skills and day to day, and we just make it work.
One thing I learned working in small business many years ago is relying on your experts. And I know it's hard when you first start out. I get it. You've got to be super careful about where you put your budget, but having some key players kind of in your team and in your corner can be the difference between success and failure in a business.
Huge. And I find, if I have experienced this, when you cut corners or you look at things only from a price perspective, at times it's cost me more money than if I just went and did exactly what I should have done and gotten the right person in the first place.
We want to cover with you today how you came up with a new service offering for your clients. And I don't want you to give away all your secrets, but maybe if you can just talk us through the thinking behind, okay, look, I'm helping people with X, but I can see that maybe they need help with Y. How did you come to create that new offering?
Yes, my 8-week program. I created this program to help people actually get a loan, whether it was a car, a property, understand debt consolidation, improve their credit scores. There's this gap at the moment, and I would love to see all brokers be able to do this as well. And yes, it does take our time, which is why it's a program I do charge for. However, what I do in that time is give them understanding really on what how we make this work, how you should improve your credit score, where your money is going to, because everyone spends their money. If I gave you $1,000 and I had $1,000, we would probably both spend it on very different things. And that's okay. And it's just understanding where your money is going to go. Where is it going when you're working so hard, what you want to achieve? So I've had incredible outcomes from it. And I'm very proud of my clients who have been on it and have been there with me from the beginning, but who have saved thousands of dollars and even a house deposit, a full 5% in 8 weeks. And that was from consolidating some debts, closing debts to improve their credit score and everything overall, and really looking at, I guess, from the $15 subscription, your $7 coffee every day, your lunch every day, and then cutting right back to looking at it, well, which one, how would I want to make this work? Would I rather keep renting, or would I want to buy a house? And what do I do? And when I was trying to buy more property, it was very hard. I got told no from the bank, who I had been banking with. They could see everything, all my money going in and out, the equity. I had money sitting there. I had a good income, and I got told no. I was like, So I was turned away, not with an answer. And then I've had times where I've seen brokers over the years turn around and go, come back to me when you have 50 grand. Well, by the time you have $50,000, the market's probably changed as well. Or if they hadn't had $50,000 now, how are they going to get to it then? And instead of turning away people and then that feeling of like, I don't understand how this is all coming together, I went, look, I think this is what we need to look at. This is what we can do. I have a program. This is what it does. We run through exactly what steps, and we gear yourself into a position where you actually understand not only your money, but what the money, where we need it to be to make it work to get to your goal. And that helps with clients as well, and retention, really, because when they are ready and they do have that savings, are they going to that person who turned them away? Or are they going to come to the person who spent an hour with them on the phone every week for 8 weeks, who gave them an understanding, who saw a different perspective of where that $1,000 a week was going to and what you would spend to get to where you want to be?
I love that what you've done there is you've thought about, okay, these are the clients that are coming to me. These are the barriers that I'm seeing sometimes. How do I use my skill set to help them in that pre-stage? Because I don't think a lot of people think like that. They think about the buyer comes to me in a certain point in the buying journey and then I help them with X. You've managed to find a way to help them before that, which is a win for everyone involved.
Yeah, I think I have seen from this program, there's been a lot of credit cards closed, which I think is a great thing. A lot of Zip Pay and Afterpay gone, done. But even I had someone who they should have never been on this rate. And this is probably from my knowledge being at a dealership, knowing about how you can structure a loan. However, they were at an interest rate of 25% on a car that if they were to sell it on that same day, they would have had to pay more money, even if it was sold, because it wasn't worth that amount. I refinanced them to a rate of 8%. So from 25 to 8. And I've gotten them to pay the same repayments, and they'll pay off this loan. Instead of having 3 more years, they will pay this off in 4 months flat.
Wow. That's massive. I mean, where do you even start with that, right? That's life-changing for them because it gets them in the property market so much sooner.
Yeah, that's right. And it improves their credit score because they're not with a bad lender. I think in lenders, there's different tiers that we have, from an A-grade lender to someone who, depending on your credit score, you may not reach that to a point, or you didn't have a certain thing. So there was different lenders that qualifies for it. But this lender, to have that gone off their credit score, closed, and then all of a sudden have this debt paid out with a reputable lender as well, that helps increase their credit score on that time. That saves them thousands in interest as well. It snowballs into not only your confidence in your money management because you can see your loan going down, but you also you have a car, instead of it having to owe more money than what the car's actually worth, it's actually worth something, so you'll get it back because you've paid it off quicker and you've saved you interest. So it really becomes a thing where, as brokers, I see it as responsibility on my end. I wouldn't put someone in a loan that didn't suit them, but also that coming from a place that only had their best interest in, improving things along the way too.
And this goes back to trusting your experts. Through a conversation with you, they've been able to access a better loan. They may not have even realized that this wasn't a good deal.
Yeah, exactly. And I think coming from, why would you go to a bank or a broker? Well, a broker I've got 85 lenders that I have access to. I have a system that I pay for that has all the table together, and I can put in the application scenario, is what I would describe it as, and it will give me all the lenders that will do it, and I can filter to what rates and what everything would be for that application. If you go into a branch, they might have 3 different products that they can offer. Just like when you look at a car and you can get, for example, a Mazda 2, and there's 3 different models and there's a different price range for each one of them, but still a Mazda 2. As a broker, we can still get you that product that you're wanting, but instead of having only one brand, we have 85.
Just opens up so many other options, and you've been through it yourself. This is the other thing that I really like about what you're doing with the people that you're working with. You're able to talk to them as someone who, I've been there, I've done that, I've seen the pitfalls, and this is how you overcome it.
Yeah, definitely. And I find, coming back to trust, and as you're building a brand in your business and what you want, I would love people to think of me in a way of, well, she's coming not only from the best interest for myself, but on a place because she's done that, and from an understanding of what they're trying to achieve. And one of my first questions when I speak to my clients is, what's your goal for the next 5 years? What would you like to achieve? And same with my 8-week program. I have goals and we rank them of where we want it to be, from, a house to renovations to a holiday to a wedding, whichever the goal is, we can make it happen. But we just, kind of like a sport, you need to know where your goalposts are.
Mm-hmm.
Same with money.
So there's a lot going on for you. And the question I wanted to finish our conversation on today is, what's next for your business? And any tips you give to other small business owners about marketing, growing their business, referrals, and trust?
Next for my business is probably having a little bit more, I guess, advertising or, promoting and speaking about myself, which is not my skill set. Like, I find this uncomfortable. And it's not,
I get it.
but having that knowledge, knowing that it's not coming from a bragging point of view, it's coming from, if you're stuck and need help and you find that someone hasn't been able to point you in that right direction, or they've said, come back and save this money and let me know when you do, and you just not understanding where it is, please reach out. I'd love to help. PK Lending & Co, as far as where I would love it to be, I would love to help more people in all stage, whether you're trying to buy multiple investment properties. Yes, I've done that. If you're trying to buy through your SMSFs, yes, I have done that, and the learning curves from that too. Construction, building, there's so many things that we can do, rural lending. But I would love to see my business help more people. And I am scaling where I am going to have a little bit of help, which is also another uncomfortable stage for me, because when it's your baby, like my business is like my baby in what I'm doing and how I'm creating it. And as you add staff and grow, it becomes not just yours, someone else's, and it's not just a job to me, it's helping. So having the right people around you for your clients, that's been my next step.
I love that. I think one of the key things there is that you become an outcomes focused business rather than task driven, and you hire people that you trust. who understand your vision and how you work with your customers, and you go forth and help more people.
And I think it's great. Now, I have these open conversations even with my clients as well. And one of my clients said, when will enough be enough? Like, when will you have enough clients as you're scaling? And my answer, me being me, was very direct to the point. I said, the day I can't answer or return your call the same day you call me is the day I know I can't scale anymore. And I feel like that's so I don't lose that service to the clients who I am working with, because I do respect them and I do value them so much that I would hate them to ever feel like they can't rely on me to answer my phone, or I'm not there for them like I'm saying I am right now.
It's very much a customer service first approach, which is how you've built trust with the people that you've worked with.
Yeah. And I value their opinions as well. I have clients who, if I'm stuck on something, I'll reach out and ask them. They're my sounding board just as much as I am to them.
We've covered a lot today, Patricia. I really appreciate your honesty, your candid comments, and sharing with us how you've grown your business. It's going to be really, really helpful for all of our small business owners who are listening to this call today.
Thank you for having me.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please like and share, as this helps us to reach more marketers just like you. I'd also love to invite you to email me if you have any suggestions for future topics for episodes, or if you'd like to be a guest on Ceretivity with Shandel. Best way to reach me is shandel@ceretivity.com.au.